And to me, it was a place to figure out who I was, to figure out the parameters of the stage, to figure out how far I could push people, to basically get the parenting I didn't get. I was going to drag people through my childhood for as long as it took for them to accept me, and then I tell them to off.
One of the continuing narratives on your show is, and one of the things that I love is when you get a young comedian on the podcast who has achieved some success and hasn't gone through 10 years, 20 years of hell on the road and in these comedy clubs. And there's a special skepticism that you bring out when you talk to comedians like that.
It's a nice way to put it.
Do you think it's important that comedians go through that same kind of suffering, of tough rooms?
Well, no, but outside of suffering, is it important for any creative person to pay their dues and figure out who they are before, we're dragged through their success? So...
When you say we're dragged through, you mean as fans?
Whatever you want to call it. And back when I started, God, am I that guy now? Back in the day... You can only do comedy at a comedy club, so you have to wait around and you have to wait for their dumb open mic. Now anyone who's been on stage for 7 minutes is like, I'm doing comedy. No, you're not. You're not. You're some guy that went on stage for 5. Do I take it as an insult to what I do as a comic? Fuck yes, I do. Do I have to shut my mouth about that? Generally, kinda. I'm happy if people are, taking improv classes so they can, be around people better. I'm happy if experiment all you want, but it's like, I'm a guy that committed to it. So if somebody's sitting before me and they don't treat it with the respect that a lifer has for it, then fuck them on some level. They can try to talk me out of it, and a lot of guys turn out to be, geniuses, and they're great, and I love them. And sometimes what you're hearing is not so much skepticism about a lifestyle, it's just old guy jealousy. So it's just like anything else, dude. As a lifer, it's hard to hear someone disrespect it or take it for granted.
Part of what goes on in comedy, and has always gone on, is that when someone achieves a certain amount of success in stand-up, there's an industry that wants to take them from stand-up and have them do something else.
I've been fortunate to avoid that. So...
Well, sort of. Of all the things, right, when you record that first episode, I think it was with Jeffrey Ross on the phone, right?
Yeah.
Of all the things that went through your head, I can't imagine that one of them was, this thing might become so successful that I become slightly jealous of my own podcast. Right? I mean, that's pretty insane.
Yeah.
What were, like...
I'm still trying to wrap my brain around that. Yeah. Yeah, it is insane. I think at the beginning, I had no idea what we were up to. I just knew I needed to keep doing something, and that I liked radio a lot, and that for some reason, whatever I did on those mics connected. I don't know what that was, but I knew it from when I did talk radio. Like I would go, like there was this thing once, I remember the time that it happened, where like we were doing political talk radio at 6 a.m. on Air America. And because we had to do news, I had to get up at like 2:30 or 3 a.m. because it takes a lot for me to wrap my brain around that, So we just spent 4 hours, trying to get this news together and, focusing my anger on stuff. Right around the Republican National Convention in 2004, like the night before, I decided to trap 5 feral cats and bring them into my house. And it became so much more important than politics. And I was so relieved by it. So I started talking about the cats. And then I started talking about, like, one time I let lentils cook too long. And it created this sort of weird tar-like substance. And, and I just was aggressively going through it because I would drink, like, 2 Dunkin' Donuts coffee and I eat all these M&Ms. And I just, like, rambled on for 15 minutes about lentil tar and my cats. And I started getting these emails like, that was the most compelling shit I ever heard. I don't know what you were talking about, but man, I was in. And I'm like, whoa, maybe I got something with this thing. So So that was what was going on with that. Like, I didn't know what that show was, but I loved the medium. I liked audio, and it's a gift, to be good at something that you didn't expect. And even if with all my speech impediments, my dumb stuttering, there's something that still comes through. I don't know why, but I loved it, and I didn't know what the show would be then. I certainly didn't know at that time. I was desperate.
But the format didn't change that much, right? I mean, it kind of from the start was you talking a little bit into the microphone and then having a conversation with a person.
Have people around, because when you do morning radio and you got a crew, there's nothing better than that. There's nothing more exciting than doing live morning radio with a bunch of people in the room. Like, it's easy to condescend, and I've done it myself. But a good morning crew, that's a big job. You got to hold an audience who don't want to be awake, and they're probably going someplace that they don't want to go to, and their life is not what they planned. And you're sitting there going, how's everybody doing out there? Here we go. It's a hell of a job. But I needed people around. I needed people to laugh. I needed to be able to look at somebody. The day I learned how to talk on a microphone alone was one of the best days of my life. You know who's the best at that? Rush Limbaugh. Now, I don't like to admit that. But, as a radio guy, you listen to that guy pause, and I don't like listening to him. I don't like it as much as any liberal who listens to Rush Limbaugh. You kind of like it because it makes you go, no. So I think 25% of his listeners are liberals going, so that's a pretty compelling personality. But the day that I learned how to do that, just talking freely to nobody, alone, in my garage, and it was comfortable, I was like, this is it. I freed myself, and I became a broadcaster in my mind. And then it just became the conversations, because I needed to talk.
And when did you realize that people were coming to your stand-up because they liked WTF?
Well, that took a while. We could see the numbers. Mm-hmm. You can see how many people download your thing. And I was aware that, that if I talked to somebody who was a big celebrity, that, we'd bring people to it.